Good evening, everyone. My name is Jenny Woolsey, and I'm an author, speaker, and an educator on diversity and mental well-being. Robin has invited me here tonight to talk to you on one of my passions, which is inclusive education. So thank you for having me, and I hope that you will take something away back to your school from my presentation. So the first thing I would like to do is share my PowerPoint with you. Okay, so the title of my talk is Inclusion Equals an Ordinary Life, and I will be speaking about this throughout my talk. I hope you've had a great week. I hope you've had a great day as we delve into this topic some more. I thought I would start with talking to you a little bit about myself. So I was born with a rare craniofacial syndrome, which means my skull and my face did not form properly. The bones were too small, and I've had multiple surgeries to reconstruct my face. I am recently widowed. My husband passed away in February. I have 3 children, 20, 17 and 14. My 17-year-old's in a downward straight to finishing year 12. My eldest 2 children have my craniofacial syndrome as well, and I've had over 20 surgeries. And my youngest daughter, who has led me on my passion for inclusive education, has Down syndrome. I am also visually impaired and use a long cane. That was a consequence of one of my surgeries. It was a complication that occurred. I was a teacher for 25 years, a primary school teacher, and did a variety of roles within the school. I left in 2014 due to anxiety and depression and reinvented myself. So now I write middle grade and YA novels. I have 6 at the moment, with another one coming out this year. And I'll talk a little bit about my books at the end. I go into schools and talk about being different and diversity and disability and just having a positive mindset. Talk about bullying as well, and that it's great to be different. I also talk at conferences on my topics, and the bottom left corner was the panel discussion I was on at North Lakes Library, where Robin actually saw me, and we were talking about choosing to challenge. All right, so I'm going to move on. So that's a little bit about me. Oh, also the middle picture here is clay work that I've started to do at guide dogs each week, and I'm branching out into exploring faces and particularly eyes with my visual impairment. I was lucky enough to be in my first exhibition last year, and that was really exciting. And my pieces sold within 15 minutes. So how cool was that? All right, I want to talk to you tonight about Jessica, my beautiful daughter who has Down syndrome, because this is really where this story starts. My other 2 children are neurotypical. They're just medical reconstructions and a variety of things. They've had speech therapy, but that's really it. They have above average intelligence. All right, so with the story with Jessica is I married, I had no children, I remarried, and we decided we would have 2 children. I had a 50-50 chance of passing on my facial syndrome. We had our 2 children. That was great. They both had the syndrome. At 39, I got clucky and I saw the big 40 coming. Oh no, womb closes, doesn't it, at 49? Well, that's what some of us think. And I said to my husband, do you want to try one more time? And he said, yes, of course, love to. Within a month before I could change my mind, I was pregnant with Jessica. Pregnancy was great. It was probably the easiest out of the three. We had all the scans and blood tests and that sort of thing. Down syndrome was mentioned, but it was mentioned in the previous two as they present in a similar way. I did have the blood test at 12 weeks, which apparently, which I wasn't told, gave me a 1 in 5 chance of having a baby with Down syndrome. But nothing was found on the scans, no indicators, so that was kind of just ignored actually. So when she was born and I looked at her when she was put on my chest, I actually saw her almond-shaped eyes and thought to myself, she has Down syndrome. But nobody mentioned it while we were in hospital, and we went home without any diagnosis. At 4 weeks, we took Jessica to see my geneticist to see what she thought Jessica had. She was really blunt and quite rude, and did a floppiness test on Jessica and brought her back to me and said, what do you think she has? And I said, well, I don't know. I think, maybe she has myofascial syndrome, just mildly, because she had a few of the characteristics. And she just basically said, she's a Downs baby, a Downs baby. Why don't you know? And she was so rude and so abrupt. And I'm going, what do you mean she's a Downs baby? What are you talking about? And I just kind of went cold and had a chill. So anyway, she had to have a blood test done, and we waited for the results. So, and we got the phone call, the next, I think it was a day or the next day, and the lady on the other end, who wasn't the geneticist, said yes, she has got trisomy 21, which is she has 3 copies of chromosome 21 in all of her cells. So trisomy 21 or T21 is the most common form of Down syndrome. I went into shock. And then I remembered my brain flashed back to her birth. But I knew no one with Down syndrome, and everyone had, like the obstetrician with all these years of having scans and blood tests, had always put such an emphasis on Down syndrome. So I had in my brain that it must be a really terrible thing for a child to be born with. And I didn't want her to have Down syndrome. We got sent a pack from Down Syndrome Queensland, a new parents pack, and I couldn't read it. I opened it up and just put it away. I Googled Down syndrome, worst thing I could have done, because everything was negative. All the things that they could have, it was just full of horror, horror, horror. And I fell into postnatal depression. I didn't want this baby. I didn't have Down syndrome. What's my life going to be like now? A child with an intellectual disability? How was I going to cope with this on top of what I already had? Well, I had 2 choices. I could either keep in my depression, or I could pull myself out and get my act together. So I got my act together. I told myself that, yes, this baby now has a label and it's going to take me in a particular path, one that I don't know and is scary. But that's okay, because one, I'm a Christian, I have God with me, so I believe that there is a reason why she was born with Down syndrome and given to me. And 2, I love this little baby. I adore this little baby. And I want to protect her. I want her to be the best version of herself that she can be. Just like her brother and sister. So I got my act together. The first place we went to was disability services. that was a whole new world in itself. She had physiotherapy, and I soon learned that all of her milestones had to be broken down into small steps and she had to be taught. We went from disability services to the special school to a playgroup to kindy to pre-prep. I was teaching part-time and my husband was a stay-at-home carer. So we also took her to the local our church playgroup, and we also enrolled her in the CNK kindy where her brother and sister had attended. They were quite happy to have her. There were no issues there. And an interesting thing happened. We started to see a difference in the two settings. In the special school setting, Jessica was not talking. She was using her Makaton, her sign language. She was constantly asking for help, even to do things that we knew she could do, and she wasn't using the toilet. At the CNK, she was using her words. She was being independent. She hardly used her sign language, and she was using the toilet. So what do you think was happening? Of course, she was role modeling herself on what the other students were doing, wasn't she? And this was like a light bulb moment for me. My goodness, 2 different settings, 2 different behaviors. What did I want from my child? Well, we got to pre-prep and we had to make the decision for prep. What were we going to do? Special school was saying they were the best place for her, but we knew that, and society was saying Down syndrome, go to special school. But we knew from her behaviour in CNK that she was doing better in a mainstream setting. Well, my husband and I didn't know what to do. We were totally confused. We had push and pull, both ways. And so we did a dual setting to start with, and Jessica actually made the choice. She put on the biggest meltdown when we said she had to go to the special school. She did not want to go there because she started off in the regular school, and Mummy went to the regular school. Her brother and sister went to the regular school, the mainstream school. So in her mind, that's where she should go, not to the special school. So by day 9, she was fully enrolled in my normal government primary school. And in here, you can see all the different activities that she does. She has been totally included in choir, in camps, in school musicals. She reads amazingly, just everything. She does what everybody else does. Okay, I want to pose a question to you. When you think of an ordinary life, what comes to mind? So I want you to think of an ordinary life of a child as well. What do, neurotypical children do? Now, I'm sure there are lots of things you can think of. So I've just listed a few, but I'm sure you can think of many more. Things like they attend the local school, they participate in community activities, they go and do dance or play soccer, all those sort of things that children like to do. All right, so if that's the case, how does having an ordinary life relate to the inclusion in schools of students living with disabilities? What do you think? For example, if a neurotypical child goes to camp, doesn't that mean that if we're fully including a child with a disability, that they should also go to camp? That if the neurotypical child can access every part of the curriculum? Shouldn't the child with disability access every part of the curriculum too in a way that they can? So this is what I'm passionate about, equality. That children with disabilities are doing what their friends are doing who don't have a disability. Of course, they need support. Of course, they need adjustments. But I want you to really think about this. All right, this diagram I saw in year 1 when I started to learn about inclusive education. And here we've got Jess with her brother and sister going to school, and then high school with her brother. Now, I like this. I think it's pretty accurate, and you can think about it and let me know your opinion. But if we have a child with an intellectual disability, there are 2 pathways they can go. The most common pathway is the bottom one, the segregated, starting at special school and segregated all the way through life. Now, of course, there are exceptions to the rule. But then you've also got the neurotypical pathway for the intellectual disabled child. They can go through primary school, high school, get a job. Now, when Jessica was little, I made short-term goals and a long-term vision for her. Her long-term vision, which I still hold to, is that she will live independently of me. She will get a job. She will marry if that's what she chooses to do. She will be out in the community, choosing her own activities, following her own passions. And that's what I want for my other 2 children. It's exactly the same. So to me, for what I want long term, I need to be mainstreaming her. All right, tonight I'm going to give you 5 tips for supporting and enabling inclusion. Now, they're related to these 4 sectors. So the first one is connected. So children who are being successfully included are connected to their class, their peers, their teacher, their school. They feel that they are part of the community. They're not separate. They're part, an integral part. And that goes with the second part, which is respected. They are valued. They are respected. They are expected to participate in activities. They are seen as just another valued member of the school community. Then we've got contributing. We want children who are included with disabilities to be contributing to the whole school. They should be contributing in their classroom, in the school environment, in extracurricular activities, whatever they are able to do, dependent, of course, on their disability. But they are involved in the school. And then, of course, we've got the learning, the progressing. So we've got the social, emotional, academic progression. We want to see them progressing. They need to be progressing, even if it's a small amount, depending on what their disability is. That is so important that we don't give up on their learning and their progression. So the first tip is to ensure inclusion is actually happening. Do you know what inclusion is? Well, I thought we'll just go over it now, just to make sure. I'm just going to move me out of the way. Okay, so this is a continuum. We're going to start on the left. The spots in the middle are your school, or they could be your classroom. The dots, the colored dots, are the children with the disabilities. So in exclusion, the children with disabilities are not allowed to be with the neurotypical children. To me, this is a special school. Special schools are set up for only specific children who are often sent there from the mainstream school. If we move on, we have segregation. This is when the students are actually in the school, but they're in an educational unit. They're away from the rest of the school children. They're not in class with them. Or they might be in small intensive classes. Now, it's interesting that some parents love this segregation because they think that their children are getting a better education away from the regular kids, but it's not true. Third one is integration, and that's when the children are just plonked into the classroom and basically they sink or swim. There's very little help for them, and they, basically do what everybody else is doing. And then, of course, we have what we want, which is inclusion. So in inclusion, they're in the regular classroom with the regular kids. They're there the same amount of time that the other children are there. They are having whatever differentiation they need, the supports they need, the resources they need. And they are a valued member of the class. That is what we want. We want children to be seen as valued, as equal, and the same, even though because everybody is different. All right, so tip 2, maintain ongoing and positive communication with parents. This is a biggie because I know when I was a teacher, I used to not really like to ring parents, or I'd leave it to the last minute and then I'd be a bit anxious about calling them. What were they going to say? But now that I'm on the other end and I'm the parent, I want schools to contact me. I want to know what's going on. I feel frustrated if I do not know what is going on with my daughter. There's been incidents at school where the teacher has not told me what's going on and I found out on the grapevine, or behaviours have occurred which could have been alleviated if I had been contacted. I could have dealt with them straight away. I think we often treat school as a secret society. We have our education jargon. We like to just keep parents out, at the gate. But if you have a child with disability, you need to get rid of that thought. I have a PhD on my daughter. I know her inside, outside, backside, front side. I know her likes, her dislikes. I know her triggers. I know her sensory issues. I know what behaviours she has and so on. But going through primary school, was I asked about any of that? No. And it was very frustrating because she did develop behaviours that I could have stopped instantly if I had have known. And the other one is, when you talk to parents, be careful with your tone of voice, because I know as teachers we get really frustrated, particularly with challenging behaviours, and we tend to get really blunt and we can be very critical. But most parents, like myself, have put so many hours of work into their children and they love them, they adore them, they treasure them. Just try and think on the other side, if you were their parent, how would you like to be spoken to? So make sure you also collaborate with them. Make sure you make decisions with them. If you are making ICPs, and you are making IEPs, make sure you do it with the parent. Don't just give it to them and expect them to sign it, which is, that happened with me a lot. It shouldn't have. And I have a story about when she was verified. So when Jessica was in grade 3, grade 4, and she was verified as ID, she had an IQ test, of course, as they do. Because we went in for the interview and the guidance officer had her IQ result. She handed it to tell us what it was, which I don't even remember. And because, of course, she has an intellectual disability. You're like, we didn't need an IQ test to even know that. And then she started with, well, because she has this IQ, she's eligible to go to the special school. And I think that's probably the best place for her to be. The gap is getting wider. She can be a leader there. Why don't you send her there? Now, I was a bit taken aback by this because we'd already told her that we were into mainstreaming. And I said to her, what do you mean she can't be a leader? Why can't she be a leader here? And of course, there was no reply. Now, the funny thing is, she got to year 6 and she was actually on the public relations team, which were leaders in the school. I think it's important that we remember also that if you meet one student with autism, you've met one student. If you've met one student with Down syndrome, you have met one student. Do not paint them all with the same brush. Yes, they might have the same syndrome, but they have different chromosomes, they have different likes, different dislikes, different triggers. So remember that. They are all different. You cannot treat every child with the same syndrome the same. All right, let's keep going. So tip number 3, be careful with the use of teacher aids. Now, I still love my teacher aids when they made me all sorts of wonderful, colourful, beautiful resources. And then we were suddenly told by the principal, no more resource making. Teacher aids have to be in the classroom. And all the teachers were in uproar. What? What are they doing in the classroom? But it's great. But it's great to have an extra pair of hands in the classroom, isn't it? But I think when we are using teacher aids with children with disabilities, we've got to be really careful how we use them. And I think we need to set rules for how they are used. I think we have to be really careful that the teacher aid is not the one, teaching the child with the disability. Often we'll send the teacher aid off with the child and say, give them lots of blocks and say, teach this to them. The teacher is the one with the bachelor or the master's degree. The teacher is the one that has been taught in pedagogy. The teacher is the one who should be teaching the child with the disability, not the teacher aid. The second thing, the teacher aid should be used for all students. They should not be super glued to the child with the disability. And why not? Well, there are a few reasons. Super glue, as I call it, doesn't allow for peer support. The other children are going to see there's a teacher aid there. They're not going to go and help. That's not going to help form friendships. Super glue doesn't allow for the student to exercise independence. They'll always be asking for help. Hey, there's someone at their beck and call. Super glue makes the child look even more different than what they appear to be to their peers. Oh, look at that child. They've got a teacher aide with them all the time. We're not going to have anything to do with them. And the last one is about just need to be careful. But I mean, this applies to teachers as well. Over the years, I heard some most disrespectful words being spoken to children with disabilities and being yelled at and just not being treated respectfully. So we need to really think about that. People with disabilities are human beings. They have thoughts, they have feelings, they have emotions, and they deserve respect. Okay, tip 4. Remember, behaviour is communication. I think we all know this. We know that a child's behaviour is trying to tell us something in a positive or a negative way. But what I think often happens is teachers often just look at the behaviour. But there are actually three parts to a behaviour. There's the catalyst. There's what event happened before the behaviour. Then there is the behaviour. Then there is the result or the consequence. So all behaviour is to do something. It's to avoid something, or it's to get attention. You know, there is a reason. Kids don't just throw out challenging behaviour for no reason. Maybe they're bored. Maybe the work's too hard. Maybe there's sensory issues going on that they can't deal with. Maybe someone's picking on them and you might not even know it because they're doing it so quietly. So it's very important that we look at the behaviour before. And I have many parents tell me that teachers don't do that. They look at the behaviour, and when they ask them, well, what happened beforehand? The teacher can't tell them. And so that's something that I really feel is important. And of course, think about if the child's going to be suspended, that really needs to be a last resort, because often suspensions just make kids look even more different than what they are. There are lots of behaviour management techniques that you can use. And one of those is the use of visuals. We must have, like when I was teaching, we would have a visual timetable, and one of my children did have challenging behaviour, and he had his own visual schedule and a first and a next card. He also had a timeout card for when things were too hard for getting to him. There are lots of resources out there. If you ask the AVTs for help, or the inclusion coach, or go to the autism hub, there are lots of communication resources to help children who cannot communicate. There is lots of visuals, there's rewards, there's timers, there's all manner of things that you can use, but teachers need to be using them. And I think this is where you as learning support teachers are vital. You should be in there helping the teachers with their behaviour management, giving them strategies, helping them to know to use visuals and routines and awards and all the things that help children with disabilities. And of course, talk to the parents. They will know usually what rewards in particular, or what they use at home, what they've been put into action. Collaborate, talk, be a partnership. It's so important. All right, tip 5 is to adjust and differentiate so the students are progressing, connected, and contributing. Okay. So adjustments are the things that can be made to, like the school, like ramps and lifts, or the teaching. Methods can change, or it can be something just for the student that they need, like an Auslan interpreter. Differentiation, as we know, is making the work, breaking it down, making it easier, or could if for intellectual impairment, it would be disability, it would be making it easier, or it could be making it extension for the gifted children, but not teaching to the middle of the class. And with the Australian curriculum, it is more easier to do that because it's seen as flexible and it's more of a general curriculum. So it's imperative that students are doing the same activity as their peers. So if they're doing something with 3D shapes and they're on a modified curriculum or they're on an ICP, then they should still be doing something about shapes. If it's writing that everybody is doing, writing a persuasive text, then the student should be writing a persuasive text at their level. It should be exactly the same activity, but just modified to what they are able to do, not a completely different activity. And please don't sit them in the corner with a box of blocks like Jessica's grade 2 teacher did. She would teach the rest of the class and sit Jessica off to the side with a box of blocks. I was not a happy mother when I found that out. Use mixed ability groupings because they get the extension. Jessica is just absorbing things all the time, and she absorbs from those students who are higher than she is. How can they do that if they're streamed? It's not going to happen. And also, I've got here, ensure all students' work is on display. When Jessica was in year 3, I walked into the classroom and all their artwork was up, and I said to the teacher, "Where's Jessica's?" She said, "Oh, she hasn't done it." And I said, "Well, why not?" And she said, "Well, she didn't want to do it." I was floored. I told Jessica she would get it done, and it was done within the next day. And I just couldn't understand that mentality. So of course, Jessica learned very quickly that if she doesn't do something, she doesn't have to do it. Now, when I was a teacher, I made sure that I displayed everybody's work. It didn't matter what level it was at. They were all valued. They all, in my opinion, as long as they did their best, it was up there. And I think that's important. These children need to know that they are valued by the things that the teacher does, because they'll know with what the teacher does not do. We want to see progression. I know we've got a lot of data collection going on. We want to see them connected, and I talked about that with the diagram. And we want to see them, of course, contributing. It's so essential that they do go on camps, they do the extracurricular activities, they are in the choir, they are in the Lego club, whatever it is that they are passionate about and would like to be involved in, there needs to be ways to make it happen for them. Don't just say it's too hard. Think creatively, get help, talk to the parents, talk to, their speech sheet or their OT, or, people within Education Queensland or whatever school you're at. Don't just say it's too hard, because to me, that's a cop-out. All right, well, I'm going to leave it there. I know you can see my passion. I really want children to be treated with equality. I really want children with disabilities to be included. It is so important. And I've seen with Jessica, it's been hard at many times, and there's been lots of things I haven't been happy with. But even with that, she is just doing so well. And I thank her teachers for what they tried to do. They tried their best. All right, so I'm going to finish with this quote. When I see you through my eyes, I think that we are different. When I see you through my heart, I know we are the same. Okay, so I'm just going to give a quick little marketing. I hope you enjoyed the talk. I hope there was something that you can take back to your school. I hope I've maybe, got you just to think a little bit more about how your children are being included in your school. All right, so I am available for talks and presentations. I've already talked about that. You can email me at jenny@jennywoolsey.com for more information. I just want to quickly show you my books, which are on the screen. So we have Ride High Pineapple, which is about a child with microneofacial syndrome, and she skateboards. She's bullied at school, and in the end, you need to read it to find out how skateboarding actually helps her. That was endorsed by the Children's Craniofacial Association in America. The second one's Brockwell the Brave, which addresses male stereotype. It's about really a gentle boy Viking who lives on a dragon farm, but he's scared of the dragons. His best friend is that strong female character. Dad gets hurt, and Brockwell actually saves his life, and so Dad, who thought he was a bit of a wimp, realizes it's okay. He's a great kid the way he is. The third one, Land of Britannica, I wrote for children who are going through divorce and separation. It's about a girl who's not coping with mum and dad breaking up. And she goes into a fantasy land and goes through a whole heap of challenges. And obviously comes out the end, mum and dad are still getting a divorce, but she has accepted it. Now, these two go together. I have two in my series of Daniel Barker. Daniel Barker, Journey to Egypt, has just been released. And this one is Daniel Barker by Power or Light. So they're about a boy in Egypt who, sorry, not a boy in Egypt. The boy Daniel receives a book from Egypt, and it is a magical book and it entitles him to 99 wishes. Peer pressure makes him use them the wrong way, and he ends up evoking the mummy's light. This one he has to go back to Egypt and try and solve it. And my other book is Amy and Phoenix, which is a bit like Charlotte's Web. It's got a lamb that is born on the farm that's only got 3 legs. And it's all about Amy, and I'm actually writing number 2 in that series. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed my presentation. Thank you once again, Robin, for having me. And I'd love to hear from you if you would like me to come out to your school, or you want to know more information about what I do, what I talk about. Check out my website, jennywoolsey.com, or email me. All right. I would like to thank you all for having me, and I would like to wish you a good night.